Gunchbags, what's going on? It's LandonRemixes here, and it's time for a review of the new second studio album from Yoe Mase, Soldier. And I've got Yoe Mase himself here. It's such a pleasure being able to finally have Yoe on for a collaboration here. Would you like to introduce yourself a little bit?
Yeah, hey everyone. It's Yoe, I'm just a guy, and I'm on this channel, and it's gonna be fun, and I'm excited for the beating.
Okay. No beatings today. No beatings.
Yeah, fine. Let's
go. So if you guys don't kind of know the story behind this, which I think I explained a little bit in my review of Life in Boxes, but Yoe hit me up, or Yosef, I should say, hit me up about, like, what was it, 4 years ago or so?
Yeah.
I think it was back in, like, maybe it was 2015 or something. You hit me up about the song that you did with Kazin, Impurity.
Yeah.
And he sent me that song and was like, "Hey, you mind if I like get a repost or a feature on your EDM about the song?" And then I missed that message or something, and then he sent me a melodic dubstep song he did with David Quinn called Fake Music.
Yeah.
And I checked that one out, and I was like super into it. I was like, this guy's like mega talented, doing dubstep and vocals and all that fun stuff. So I've been following Yosef since then, and it's been quite a pleasure seeing how he's grown as an artist. Snow Ghost EP was like one of the first EPs that I reviewed on my channel, and then of course there was Life in Boxes, which was an album that was in the works for a couple years. I think you've been talking about that one for a while. And I was really excited when that came out. I thought it was a beautiful collision of post-rock, electronic, and EDM, all these kind of influences melding together in a really cool way. And it ended up actually being my album of the year last year. It was my favorite album of 2000. What was last year? 2017?
Yeah, 2017
totally
was last year.
Yeah, my favorite album of 2017.
Yeah.
So then we get into this year, and here you are with another freaking full-length album.
Yeah.
Which is nuts. And I think Yosef sent me some samples of the early workings of this album, very early on. And he was like, "Hey, what do you think about this?" I was like, "Yeah, it's good stuff. I'm excited to see how it works." And then it evolved from an EP into an album, and it's just been it's been a cool ride. And it's cool to see this album, I guess, coming so quickly after the other one. And then you said you're gonna go off the map a little bit after this album, right?
Yeah. I need a little bit of a break, I think. I'm already working on new stuff, but I take my time sort of to develop, projects. I feel like I'm more of maybe an album artist. I don't really do the single thing so much.
Yeah.
So I'm probably gonna stay in that lane. I just sort of like these bigger projects and trying to tell this story I'm trying to tell, and yeah, it might be a bit, but there's definitely something on the horizon.
So speaking of the story that you're referring to right now, let's get right into this. And I've put some things together in my own mind and how this album kind of pieces together, but I think it would be better for the viewers to kind of get this story directly from you.
Well, I'm gonna be semi-vague because I don't I sort of don't want to put my own feelings on, I know it's coming from me, but I want people to relate to it on,
for sure,
their level. There is a story, and both albums are connected, and the whole, how I imagine my career arc is trying to tell a giant story that centers, if I'm gonna be a little more specific, on self-reflection and self-discovery, sort of figuring out who you are. And that's as much as I'll say. This album in particular is sort of about, the mentality, the pop mentality that I'm sure a lot of producers have, just trying to fit in when you feel like you've come to music so you don't have to fit in. But then then it becomes another, popularity contest in a lot of ways. So that's sort of what this album's about. But I'm trying to tell it more in a vague type of way, something that's not too specific. So yeah, that's sort of what the album Soldier is about. Yeah.
Yeah, what you were saying just now, I think relates a lot to the title tracks. I guess the two part right
Yeah.
there. And I was just thinking about it when I was just listening to it. How like there's the line that says like 18 years preparation, and then in part two it says 18 years gone to waste. So
Yeah.
it's just like you've. I feel like what you're trying to put across there is that you've spent all this time preparing and learning music and getting somewhere with your music. I guess it all ends up boiling down to, at least in the music industry these days, like how can you conform to what's popular and the sounds that are in right now.
Yeah.
I guess, and I feel
Yeah.
like that's kind of what this album centers around.
Yeah.
Sort of.
The analogy of a soldier is really, it really is. I'm trying to paint like the idea like we're all sort of at war, like with at least me personally, like I have an internal conflict, and that's about how I feel. Just this whole the industry. It could be harsh. That's all. It could be really harsh.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. So yeah. It is. You're sort of on the money.
And would you say that this album is kind of like the journey of, I guess, what it means to be an independent artist and trying to make it in the music industry
Yeah.
landscape we're in right now?
Absolutely,
Okay.
it's 100% about that struggle. I spend so much time. I try to make this stuff sound as legitimate as possible. It doesn't necessarily mean anything. I could tell you that I do have, I have, fans these days, which is sort of a crazy thing to say, but they're people who like my music, and it's sort of like mind-boggling to me. But that doesn't mean, and their passion is very apparent, but that doesn't mean that higher ups at different places necessarily pay attention to this stuff. So it's definitely about that struggle, the struggle of trying to succeed in your dreams. Not to be cliche, but that's really what it is. Yeah.
So when we're getting into the actual like album itself, I think this album is interesting because I'm trying to think of how this would have been set up when it was still an EP, but like I see this album as kind of split into two different halves almost. And I'm not sure if that's what you were going for, but there's
Yeah.
like the first 5 tracks and then there's the last 5 tracks, and each kind of has its own. I guess there feels like a pretty strong split, and even like some of these songs I feel like have very seamless transitions into each other, which I really like. But then let's say like Homeless into I've Been a Liar is like a very like
Yeah.
just straight
Yeah.
like quick transition, and it almost feels like to me like, let's say this album was on like a vinyl, or it could be like a double disc or something. It's just two different themes, I guess, and two different ideas
Yeah.
that kind of reflect both like Soldier Part 1 and Soldier Part 2. I guess that would make sense.
Yeah,
But,
100% what I was trying to do. I was trying to sort of, without being too specific, point out like that duality, sort of how I feel like my mind feels,
Sure.
and instead of going into like a chorus by the end of, Homeless, which sort of seemed like the obvious call. Like I just wanted to cut to the second part of the album because it just felt like it sort of painted the picture better. Initially when it was an EP, there were a couple of tracks that I was working on. I started going through the internal struggle I was just talking about. So just because I felt like, am I feeding too much into this whole hype culture right now? And I felt like I'm gonna make a pop album because I like pop music. There's no problem
Yeah.
with that. But I needed to be like an honest pop record, and that's sort of what my whole like intention with everything was. Make jams, but be real about it. So that's just sort of definitely on
sure.
purpose.
But what I wanted to say though is it seems like the first half is a more produced, I guess, like pop project, and then the second half kind of, I guess, points back more to your style on like Life in Boxes and like stuff you've done before. It's a little bit more R&B influence. There's all, of course, those post rock influences as well.
Yeah.
It feels a little bit more you.
Yeah.
In the first half of the album, not to say I thought it was bad or anything. It's just there are some obvious ties into like the current like mainstream sound, and it seems like you've got like some auto tune and things like that you can hear like very. I think it was on Falling.
Yeah.
That you can hear very clearly, and it just feels like that was kind of like purposely tied into that. And I remembered you had talked to me about that a while ago. You said like you may notice how as the album progresses, it feels more like open. And I definitely felt that, like, the second half feels a little bit more atmospheric. I don't know. I don't want to say obscure, but you know, it's less formulaic, I suppose, than the first half of the album.
That's true. What you're saying is true. Definitely.
Cool. I guess the logical thing to do here is move forward and talk about song specifics. So we might as well just go through this track by track and talk about what I loved, what I didn't love, I guess.
All right.
Really, I guess I might as well just say to begin with, there isn't much I didn't really like about this album. Really, the only things that I'd say really stuck out to me as, like, kind of something I had to pick with was a couple of the songs, like Prove Me Wrong and Circles. Both of the hooks, I guess, are, like, fairly repetitive, and that usually, I have a hard time kind of vibing with that. But it also, at the same time, it's like my mindset when listening to this is that the first half I am listening to a more pop and, like, formulaic thing. So it's like I can't really criticize that.
Yeah, you're touching on that exact thing. So, like, you know, with the hook of Prove Me Wrong, this was so intentional. Like, the obvious call would have been to do, like, overdubs over, like, that hook in the chorus and sing, like, other melodic lines, you know, much like a pop you know, song on the radio might sound like. But I wanted it to be really repetitive because there's little things in every track that are sort of, you know, purposely like, oh, this is like that, you know, this is too, like, that's sort of the idea. I still want it to be good. I just didn't want it. I want it to be, like, a little obvious with certain things. So it's cool. You're picking up on a lot of them, like, you know, with Falling and Prove Me Wrong, with Circles, and with Homeless even. It's cool.
Like, and it's hard to say that that's even a pick because, like, you're very obviously, like, trying to make it feel, like, more formulaic and poppy. So I guess you couldn't really say there's a lot else I really didn't like about this album.
That's cool.
But getting into this, I guess I'd start with, like, Soldier Part 1. Just a really enjoyable song. I think, is there, like, a little string section toward the end of the song? That I really enjoyed. I like the piano's kind of soft and somber. Like, it feels almost like gospel-y. Yeah, I'd say, like, old and sort of gospel-y, I guess. Which I thought was cool. And it feels, I don't know, like the beginning with you, like, scratching the pen on the paper or whatever, it feels like it really brings across that feeling of, like, you're going to war and you're kind of, like, nervous about what's going on, I guess. So that's kind of how I felt about that. In another place, Falling, I love, like, as a song, even though it does have some formulaic things about it. Like, it's probably the most, like, fun and, like, catchy and, like, groovy song you've ever made, like, in my book.
Yeah, thank you.
It's cool. Like, it's a really cool song. And is that Jackie singing on this song?
Yeah, it's my wife.
Okay, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And this song released, like, on your wedding day, right?
Yeah, it came out on my wedding day. It wasn't the plan, but, you know, we ended up delaying the album, like, maybe a couple weeks just because they wanted to do that sort of as a surprise.
I mean, it's cool.
Blue. They're good really guys there. Cool. Yeah, it's super awesome. It's super cool. Sure. I'll always remember that, you know?
Oh, and I guess one other thing I wanted to say about this part of the album is that, like, I guess the theme of it is more obvious in, like, these 4 tracks than, like, what's going on in the second half. Like, I guess it's a little bit more obscure on the back end, but, like, the first half seems like a very obvious, like, love story, which you've heard, like, you know, you've heard 1,000 different times in different pop albums and whatnot. And obviously, like, you're not using a bunch of different lyric cliches, but it is a love story. Yeah. And that's, like, that's just, I felt like that kind of helped connect the first half into itself a little bit better and make it a little bit more thematic. Yeah, there are a lot of great things here. Circles, like I said, the hook was, like, a little repetitive for me, but I'm not gonna keep referring to that. I think the little bass and everything, it's very groovy. I just really enjoy that kind of underlying thing there. And I also want to say I really enjoyed how Circles and Homeless tie into each other. Yeah. Like, I don't know, I didn't remember it from when you sent me the album originally, but, like, when I was going back through it recently and listening through this album, I did not actually think Circles and Homeless were two different songs, because like it's such a great transition between those. Like you get the end of Circles, and then you get the little, was it the violins at the beginning of Homeless, and it all sounds like it just melts together in a really really nice way. Even though that song, I don't know, you kind of dig deeper into Homeless, and it starts to sort of feel like a different song. The intro feels like it belongs there at like the end of Circles, I guess.
Definitely.
And even like, I'd say even the beginning of Homeless kind of reminded me of Eden maybe a little bit, like some of his stuff. Like I think he has a newer song called, it was, everyone was calling it Fake Love, but that didn't end up being the actual name of the song. But that song, I'm completely drawing a blank. It reminds me a bit of that. Then again, I think I might have heard this song before that one, so I don't know. Just got some similarities, and I can see where that might tie in. Homeless, though, I think is a fun song, and I kind of appreciate it in an ironic way, which might be what you're trying to go for, because this song honestly reminds me of like the stuff on the Chainsmokers Collage EP. Is that what you're going for with that?
100%. Like I was thinking, I was directly thinking actually that Coldplay and Chainsmokers collaboration. Okay, that was the inspiration, and you know, like I really like the Chainsmokers and Coldplay. But there is something very like with that track in particular. I've always felt like it sounded like a little too much, maybe like Roses. Yeah. So to me, there was always like a sour note there, but like but I love both artists, and I like so much that like it was sort of a tribute to this idea of like artists that I love who are maybe making things that could be better. That was sort of, I'm not bashing them because I really do love both of them, but yeah, that's sort of what I was trying to go for there.
And actually, I'm going to go ahead and skip ahead real quick, because while we're on the topic of Coldplay, I wanted to say that like there are some things on the back end of this album that really remind me of Coldplay a lot, and I'd say especially on Oh Lord, that song kind of sounds like it could be straight off of like Ghost Stories. And like a very, very similar vibe. You've got like a kind of similar R&B beat going on there, and then some of the like falsettos you're singing on that song are like very Chris Martin to me. Like it almost sounds just like him. It's kind of crazy, but yeah, no, I'm a massive Coldplay fan. And
I love Coldplay. I think, it's obvious that I like Coldplay if you listen to my music. Mm-hmm. I try to do it a little different. Not to be like my identity is like just a Coldplay clone, but like I'd be lying if I said that they aren't a huge inspiration. Chris Martin in particular, definitely.
Yeah, for sure. I can definitely hear that on this album. I'd say even more so probably on Life in Boxes, but this album for sure has some Coldplay vibes. Yeah, as we're moving forward though, on a couple of these first tracks, I did want to compliment that you've got some really nice guitar licks on this that I really enjoyed. So
thank you.
Good work on that. I've Been a Liar, I'd say, is kind of the turning point of this album, and it's interesting because there are some like progressions in the song that feel very like nice and euphoric and like make me feel happy, I guess, but then there are some things that are very unsettling about it, some progressions that feel like darker and unsettling, and like some of like the vocal layering sounds like it could have been out of like a horror movie or something, with like the little girl, and then it's like deep and
creepy girl.
And I feel like is this song more or less just like a commentary of what kind of what you were saying earlier, like your internal struggle, I guess, or
well, it's sort of alluding to this relationship that doesn't really exist,
Yeah.
And that's what I've Been a Liar about. Is the whole previous stuff. Like, I'm not even really talking about I'm not even really talking about a relationship. I'm sort of just using it. But I am talking about an internal conflict, the same type of internal conflict that was in the relationship, just turning it away from that it's a relationship.
When I was listening through this in more recent runs, I'd say what I've Been a Liar kind of represents to me, and like obviously if that's not what you were going for, then that's not what you were going for. But it seems like to me, what you were kind of trying to say is like this you blended with like pop and like trying to kind of force yourself into a more mainstream like commercial sound.
Yeah.
It seems like that's your like Liar. Like this is me
Yeah,
not being true to myself, I guess.
Yeah, I want to be, the whole relationship thing in the beginning is like also an analogy to, it's really my relationship to music and the industry. But yeah, it's also another analogy. So I've Been a Liar is really like, I guess my main thing was I didn't want the album to be preachy at all. I want it to be like a learning experience, like just like exactly how I'm thinking in the past couple months, So that point is sort of the point where it's like, like F this, right? Like, what am I doing here? What am I trying to, who am I kidding? And that, I think that's, I've Been a Liar is certainly the turning point, definitely. And it's the most B-sidey track. Which is,
Yeah, definitely. I like the ending of the song a lot as well, where you've got, I think that's probably the most like most Life in Boxes sounding song with like those post rock guitars and whatnot toward the end. I think it's really cool. But Take Cover, I don't think I really had a ton to say about that one specifically. And actually a lot of these songs toward the end were like just they set like a certain atmosphere for me that I really enjoy, but I guess I don't really have a ton specifically to say about them.
Yeah, at the end of the day, there is an interesting little, like, I guess, Easter egg in that song that sort of, says something.
Now I feel like I have to find it.
Yeah.
Well, I'll leave that up to the viewers if they want to go.
Go search.
That out, they can go ahead.
Also look in the artworks because that too.
Oh yeah.
Has a lot of cool stuff.
I guess another thing I wanted to mention is with these songs toward the end of the album. I just enjoy the instrumentation a lot here. Like,
thank you.
I guess I can't remember which song it is. It has like some reverse like organ sounds.
Reverse organ sounds.
Yeah, like, or it might not be specifically an organ, but to me it sounds like an organ, but it's like reversed.
Oh, is it an Oh Lord?
It probably is an Oh Lord.
Yeah.
And then actually in that track as well, I wanted to note that like there's like a synth toward the end that to me was like very like jazz fusion era.
Like,
or like maybe like cool jazz.
I think I know what you're talking about. In the second chorus, there's there is like sort of this solo-y synth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed that as well. But yeah, most of these songs on the back end, I'd say just like set a particular atmosphere. It brought, I guess, like where a lot of the first half of the album, it was strange in some aspects to see like your voice and like your style, I guess, trying to blend with a commercial sound. This back end kind of brought me back to like why I love your music, and your like post EDM sound in the first place. So
thank you.
Yeah, I really enjoyed both of those, and then I think concluding here, Soldier Part 2 is another one of my favorites on the album, and I really enjoyed how it's similar to the first part in some ways, but I guess it's a little more rich, a little more organic. Like your vocals are, I guess, a little bit more fluid than they are on the first part, and you're free to kind of do some different intonations and whatnot. And then I guess it's just a more like deep atmospheric track that I felt was just a really enjoyable and like a really solid closer too. Like I left, it makes you leave this album feeling really satisfied, I suppose, about everything. But at the same time, it's like you don't necessarily think the story is over. Like it's a conclusion to a chapter, I suppose, but it doesn't leave you thinking like everything is fine, everything is okay, life is good. You're going to be completely satisfied with your music and your internal struggle and everything. Like I still crave for more, I guess, when this album finishes. So
I don't know if you noticed this, but you should listen to the end of that song and the beginning of Life in Boxes.
Really?
Yeah, do that.
Okay. No, I didn't actually notice that. So
do that.
Viewers, you guys should check that out. But I'm gonna do that after we get off this call.
Cool.
I probably should have noticed that.
Yeah,
But I guess another thing is I wanted to ask you, like, I guess I don't want you to be too specific, but obviously, like, Life in Boxes and this album are interconnected to some degree. And it was like, I remembered Yosef sent out these postcards in, like, promo for the album, and it said, like, it was like a note that seemed like it was like a letter from a soldier. And I guess that's you.
Yeah.
And you said, like, I had a dream where I was floating through space in a box, and then it was like, that's an obvious reference to the theme of Life in Boxes. So I guess, like, how exactly do they fit together here?
Well, once again, see the connection by the end of that last song. That's a more specific answer, but I guess I don't want to get too specific, but I will say that the mentality that one has during Soldier might lead to the mentality you have during Life in Boxes.
Okay.
That's sort of the best way to put it.
Yeah, so this album's more of like a prequel, I suppose.
Yeah.
To that.
Yeah, I'll just confirm that.
Yeah, awesome.
100%.
And I think actually was it Soldier Part 2 that had like the lyric that pointed to Life in Boxes, like you said? You found yourself like floating through space.
There is.
Cool.
I mentioned Lonely at one point.
Yeah, and you mentioned Lonely. And was there another one you made reference to as well on that song?
I mean, you'd have to dig. You'd have to dig. Right.
But yeah, no, guys, definitely check this album out. I feel like this is an album that is extremely relevant in today's like music landscape. It's something that I feel like, well, I guess more than anything, like if you're an independent artist, this album should be encouraging, knowing there are other people that kind of deal with these same struggles and trying to conform as an independent artist in the pop music landscape and everything. And it's also just a fantastic album in the way of like musicality and everything. I think Yosef is a criminally underrated artist. If you haven't checked out Life in Boxes yet, I'd say that's probably the best fusion of post rock and EDM.
Yo, you're giving me too many compliments.
Stop.
You're giving me too many compliments. Yo, you should just finish the review without me. I can't even hear it.
But yeah, guys, if you, as Yosef said, these albums are intertwined. So if you haven't listened to Life in Boxes yet, you might just want to like listen through this LP and then just go straight into that one. It's all a great journey. I've enjoyed listening to this album a lot, and it was definitely worth the wait to see this finally released. For Soldier, on my scale, I'm probably feeling like a strong 8.5 out of 10. Like, I'd say, like, this album, and I'd say more than anything, it's because this album feels a little bit more like it's going to be dated more than Life in Boxes was, because that album, I feel like a lot of the sounds on that are going to be very timeless, and, like, your specific blend, like, that's not necessarily going to be something that happens again in, like, the timeline of music, I suppose. But this album obviously has some, like, pop music influences that people are going to recognize and be like, that's very like 2016, 2017, 2018.
Can I counter you?
I suppose. Yeah.
So it could be, because what I was trying to do is it's sort of like a satire in a lot of ways. Yeah. It could be that the satire gets it ages like a wine. So we'll see in a couple years really how it sounds. But like when I listen to 80s music, I almost like it so much because it's 80s music. Right? Yeah, no, that's true. We'll see. I don't know. I tend to agree with you. It will probably, it's very much supposed to be like a contemporary pop record. So definitely hear where you're coming from. Life in Boxes is its own thing. Yeah. Anyway, like I said, guys, make sure to check out this album for yourselves. I will have the Spotify link in the description so you can check it out. Special thanks to Yosef for featuring on this video. I've wanted to do a video with him for a while now, and this is the third review. Make sure to check out this album and Life in Boxes as well. I'll have the review for that album
as well as a link to my top 10 albums of 2017 in the end card. Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed this collab review, and we'll catch you later. Peace.
See you.